We actually did get this question. Do data scientists make more than doctors? We're going to uncover the truth on this one. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Data Neighbor podcast with Shravya and Sean. Today we are talking about salary and why it's important and what you should know about it.
Yeah, excited to talk about why people work, basically. I mean, people hopefully you like your job, but for most of us, if they weren't paying us, I probably wouldn't be doing this. So we're good to get into the what's behind that.
The most interesting part about this is I wish all the things that I wish I knew when I was a student or early in my career, just talking about them to just help people like how I was when I started out. I think that's the most exciting thing for me.
Yeah, and on top of that, even for experienced people, from time to time, you might want to calibrate, is the work I'm doing comparable to what the market is offering? There's a lot of myths out there, so we're just going to look at hard data today. We actually did get this question. Do data scientists make more than doctors? We're gonna uncover the truth on this one.
Data scientists make more than doctors. I think definitely some doctors.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah, it depends, right? I mean, I don't know as much about doctors. I'm sure there are very, very top tier doctors that make a lot. But I also think, you go to a lot of schooling to become a doctor. You're kind of missing out on those years of experience, and you go to data scientists and start growing your salary down. Great question.
Yeah, totally. I love that. There are so many people that do not understand how tech compensations work. Like I have my cousins and friends that I speak to, and they're like, really? I didn't know about this at all. And they're 15 years into the industry. So I'm also pretty excited to help people like them to understand about how salaries work.
Yeah, and surprisingly, there's not a lot of consistent information out there on the internet or in just discussions. Why do you guys think that's the case?
The man's trying to keep you down. The government, those corporate stooges at the top. Actually, that is part of it, right? I think there's definitely taboo around talking about this. And I think there's two perspectives on it. One, as an individual, it's like you don't want to make people jealous if you make more than them. And if someone makes more than you, you kind of don't want to feel bad yourself. One of the switches for me when I'm pretty open actually with my colleagues and especially my close friends about what I make and what they make, because I learned that's the only way to help myself or help them is to know what baselines are. And the only one who benefits truly from you not knowing that is your employer. It makes sense, right? They want to get good return on investment, the best return on investment possible. So if you're doing a great job or you're working, they can pay you less for it. They're probably going to go for that. Why would they pay you more?
In India, people talk about compensation very freely. I don't know if you know about it. Yeah.
No.
In fact, it comes out in news as well. Like this person got so much compensation out of this college, and because it's a big deal, no one would make that much money from this. And probably they're getting so much because they joined one of these tech companies from America, so that they got the same compensation as like an American employee would. And that's a lot of money for Indian currency. In fact, I remember getting my first job in India, and the first question that people used to ask was, how much are you making? Or in fact, my dad probably said it himself without people asking, because it's just like a thing. As soon as you tell what your job is, they say how much compensation it is as well. Like
That's
they make
so
much.
interesting.
Yeah.
I remember when I was traveling in many different countries, especially Asian countries, it's the same thing. It's, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? How much do you make? Literally, those are the three questions from people that you have some sort of relationship with, meaning they could be your distant relatives, They could be your distant cousins, and then that's all they want to know, just trying to get to know you. So it's obviously a shock for people that have been used to this being a very private topic, but elsewhere in the world, it's as common as how are you? Part of the motivation for this episode is that salary and negotiations is something that everybody has control over. Information is power. It's okay to know what the fair market rate is, or at least be equipped to find out what they are.
Yeah. Knowing what salary should be is the first step. to then later on negotiating or working towards that salary. But you can't
Yeah.
do that if you don't know what the number is.
And one disclaimer before we dive further into this is we're only going to look at publicly available data. We're not disclosing any of our current, previous employers' salary or anything like that. So we're only examining something that you, as a viewer or a listener, can also do yourself. We can give you the sentiment of when we look at the data, whether it's within the ballpark or not. But do know that we've done this many, many years of looking at salaries, having the team salary structure. So we do have a lot of experience. Okay, so let's now dive into what are some important factors that impact salary. Travia, do you wanna give
Sure.
some things off the top of your head?
Definitely. So salary would get impacted majorly by the industry that you're part of. Is it tech? Is it insurance, health? Like which area that you're looking at, right? Number one, the industry. And number two, it's going to be dependent on the level that you're part of, right? That I would say probably is the highest causal. If you're a IC1, IC2, IC3, and 5 and 6. So these are like individual contributor. That's what an IC means. So that's one track. And after a certain level of an IC, you start getting into manager level. If you are a manager, then M1, M2, M3. Every company has its own levels. So based on that. So leveling in the industry is a big reason for different comp structures. So that's what I could think of to start with.
Yeah, those are really big factors. In addition to those, things like location. So for example, somebody who's from the San Francisco Bay Area is going to most likely make more than folks who are somewhere in New Mexico if you possess a rare skill set. So if you're one of 10 people that know the most cutting edge in causal inference techniques, for example, or experimentation, you're probably going to get paid a lot. In addition to the two that you said, those generally have pretty good influence on the total compensation as well.
One thing I also want to tell while talking about levels is that this is not like a linear regression that just keeps going with the number of years of experience. It goes up to a point and probably tapers after maybe 15 years of experience, I guess, unless you chose different routes of where you are.
I think one part of salary in your current job is also performance. So you might be at the same level as you were previously, you haven't moved, but you can still get some merit increase that year if you perform quite well. So it's a band. So I and someone else can both be at a staff or principal level, but make different amounts of money based on our performance. Two things that aren't characteristics of you, but it's more of the industry that'll have impact is the kind of macroeconomic situation. 2021, right? There's like high demand for data scientists, low supply. Salaries were honestly more than. I just went through a bunch of interviews this past year. In 2024, there's been a lot of layoffs, a lot of tightening up. And so demand is lower. At the same time, a lot of people have switched over to data in the past 5 years, so supply is higher. So that's going to bring down the salary.
Yeah, good points. What are some factors that don't have as much of an impact on total compensation that you guys can think of?
I think number of years of experience, like I said, is definitely not linear. There's so many people that I've coached telling me that hey, I have 20 years of experience in BI. Should be my expectation? It definitely depends on the type of experience that you have and the impact you've created and how much you could sell yourself as someone who could bring the entirety of the 20 years of experience.
I totally agree. Also, years of experience are going to be measured differently based on the company. If you're at a company that's not known for having great product and data science and you have the same years of experience as someone who's coming from a company that's known for a really strong data science team, those years of experience are not equal. I think there's some factors that can help increase the probability of you getting a job, but might not have a linear relationship to compensation, like how many LinkedIn Learning or Coursera certificates you've received. I think that might help you on your resume potentially, but when they're thinking about your comp, unless all these certificates really reflect themselves in a much better interview performance, I don't think it's going to factor it into your compensation.
So to be honest, I don't think there is does not help, fully does not help, but there are nuances to it. Coming from an Ivy League school, I understand that you want to go for Tier 1 universities, but to be honest, most of these educational related stuff, it could be the institutions, it could be the certifications, or it could be like college or like online degrees. All of these probably has an effect in getting into a job the first time, right? And to be honest, you could find other ways to get that first break in as well. It doesn't have to be through the degree.
Yeah.
That's, I would say, the most traditional way to get it, and probably needs less of exercise from your side. But that's definitely not the only reason why you'd get your first break in. So I have interviewed tier 1 people from Harvard or, Stanford. To be honest, that does not matter, because as soon as they come to the interview, it's purely based on the interview performance.
Yeah.
If they do not sell to us that they are capable of taking this job, so all of these probably help you get the first opportunity, but after that, it's fully you.
Yeah.
And I would go as far as certifications don't really matter. I've talked to quite a bit of people that are like, hey, should I get this certificates from MIT even or Stanford? Well, the thing is, unless it furthers your skill sets, unless it gives you
100%.
practice on the things that would be really useful when you actually do look for a job, the certificate itself does not matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Learn it so you can
absolutely.
actually apply it. Actually, it all comes down to impact. Also, once you're in the role, that you're salaried, the hours are not what matters. If you can highlight the impact is what matters. That's the thing. We can get into the how-tos later, but don't think you should be getting paid a certain salary because you work 70-hour weeks if those 70 hours aren't doing anything for the business.
Yeah.
But you work a 30-hour week. If you can make a huge change with that, you're probably going to get more money. Hours alone are not going to increase your compensation.
So let's start looking into some hard data here of what data scientists make. Just a disclaimer up front, what we're looking at today is going to be tech-related salary. We're going to look at some different companies across the tech industry. As I'm pulling up the salary information, Shravya, do you want to give a high-level overview of the compensation structure in the tech space?
Definitely. They start with base compensation, number 1. And the second part is stock compensation. And few companies have bonus, the percentage of the base pay. And along with bonus, some companies also have stock refresh. They give you a bonus based on the base pay percentage. And also there is a stock refresh they keep giving you every year based on how you performed. And most of you might know, in your first year, there's a possibility of getting a sign-on bonus, depending on how much hiring manager or the company wants you. Based on your other competing offers, there is an element of sign-on bonus that they try to give you. And sign-on bonus comes in at the first time that you join a company.
Cool. Okay, so we have pulled up this website. It's called levels.fyi. This is where self-reported salaries, specifically in the tech space, happens quite a bit. This is a very popular site for people to find salary information across the web. And then people also provide their own salary in an anonymous fashion so that this site itself could aggregate all the data, and then because of the amount of data, now we get a good sense of what salary information looks like and how it breaks down by some of the dimensions that we talked about. There's a whole lot of pivots that you can do. And what we're going to do here, we're just going to look for the title, data scientist. Oh, well, there's the
While
data
Ahai
scientist.
brings this up, there's other sites too, Glassdoor or LinkedIn, that also have salary information to varying degrees of reliability. I think levels.fyi tends to be the most reliable, but when I am really trying to understand salary, I'll also go to those other sources and triangulate if everything's in the same area.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more. I think there's something called Candor, CANDOR. They also have some compensation stuff that was very interesting.
Candor, I haven't heard that one. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
So we're going to list out some of these resources in our descriptions as well. In today's episode, we're only going to focus on levels.fyi, and you should definitely try out all the other platforms that Sean and Shravya suggested. So we have the data scientist title here, and what you're seeing immediately is summary statistics for this field across the board. The median total comp you can see is $168,000, and then you start seeing the percentiles associated with that. And this is across all companies. All companies that have this data scientist title that levels.fyi have salary information aggregated across. If I were to not discriminate on levels, on location, industry, or any of those dimensions, this is the main big number. If we're looking at the market as a whole, this information is actually not very useful because different companies, different industries, they're going to pay vastly differently. What we're going to do is dive into a specific company. Let's look at a few that has the reputation for paying the most. If we go to, so levels.fyi still has Facebook as Facebook instead of Meta. If we search for Facebook here, we go to their company page. Now, different roles paid differently. So that is something folks can play around with. And if we search for data scientist, this comes up. And so this is the Facebook data scientist salary broken down by what Shravya mentioned. Base salary, stocks per year, and then bonus by levels. Different level gets paid in a different band. I find this graph really interesting. So if I expand this more, so it goes from IC3, so individual contributors, 3 is like entry level, like the first level that anybody earlier in their career is likely going to be placed in. And then as you advance, as you get promoted, you go to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the interesting chart is really these guys to visualize it. On the left, you have the trajectory of, hey, as one progresses in their career at Facebook, this is what compensations look like. On the right is all the different data points within each level plotted out, and it gives you a sense of how narrow/wide the range is. You guys want to talk through what you're seeing here?
Well, I think it's interesting how the distribution between equity and base changes over time. In the beginning of your career here, at least for Facebook, and I'd say this is probably other places too, your base is the majority of your salary there. IC3, which is like a couple years of experience, you're making 157 at Facebook, and 132 of that seems to be your base salary. Then several years down the line, when you're at IC6, so that's kind of like a staff level, maybe 8 to 12 years of experience, half and half. And then as you progress more, your base kind of stays the same. Maybe it increases a little bit, but where you're seeing the real big bumps is actually in equity. I would think later on in your career, you're having a lot more impact on the success of the entire business. Your work is going to directly impact your salary via equity, where base wouldn't.
So we've looked at the chart of by different levels, how one can dramatically increase their compensations. So now let's just look at the raw numbers. What are we expecting for different levels at Facebook?
Okay, let me just state that here. At start of your career at Facebook, at an IC3 level, you make $157,000 an average per year. And as an IC4, you make $250,000 per year. And as an IC5, you make $370,000. And the number keeps increasing, guys. At IC6, you have $515K. And in IC7, this is a great number. We have on average people making around $746K. And the most interesting part about this is the ratio between the base and stock and how that keeps changing over different levels. As you get senior, the number of dollars that you get in stock keeps increasing.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think going back to our question about do data scientists make more than doctors? So Facebook, this is some of the top salaries and stuff. I don't have levels FYI for doctors, but with ChatGPT, primary care doctors looks like they make between $220 and $250. This is not just beginning of your career doctors, right? This is pretty established. And you're making that as an IC4 at Facebook data science. If you look at something more specialized, like a cardiologist, anesthesiologist, surgeon, these are making a lot more, obviously, right? But cardiologist, 400 to 500 grand, that's at this IC6 level. I mean, that's like a staff data scientist at this IC7, you're at 750. That's probably competing with surgeons, I would guess. So do data scientists make more than doctors? I would guess if you had looked at earlier in their career, for sure, data scientists are probably making more than doctors. As you progress more, it's probably pretty even.
Also, another very important thing, if you look at the amount of money they spent on studying, then I would say maybe there are chances that data scientists win the battle.
That's a great summary of just looking at a very specific company. There's other things that anyone can do to get more granular with the data. So for example, the location filter here, within United States. You can also do San Francisco Bay Area, and you get a breakdown that is more specific to the Bay Area. And then if you go for London, for example, and you see across levels,
Big drop.
less of data points available, but you see the difference in the compensation on average for the exact same level across the board. So something that you can play around with and get familiar depending on your situation. Okay, Shravya, you and I have been hiring managers for a long time. Do these look reasonable to you?
Yeah, definitely. If I'm looking at people who are starting out in their career, IC3 seems to be something like that. And IC4 is more like, I would say, 2 to 6 years of experience, depending on the type of work that they've done. And yeah, IC5 as a senior to staff data scientist, yeah. So these numbers definitely look reasonable to me, for sure.
Yeah, and I would agree. I've done hiring across many different companies in the Silicon Valley, and whilst we're not disclosing anything specific from our experience, these are within range for sure. So data scientists do make a lot, especially in top tier companies. This is something to aspire to for sure. And let's look at a couple other companies and then we'll wrap. We're going to Netflix, the company page, and then we are searching for data scientist. And if you're a machine learning engineer, if you're a data engineer, you can do the exact same search. Oh, Netflix here. Whoa, that looks kind of different. What's going on here?
Yeah, this looks totally different, right? When compared to Meta, from what I know about Netflix, I don't think they do stock. So all the compensation for them is totally in cash, like basically base comp. And that's the reason I think you see a lot different type of chart here. It's very interesting, actually. Why did Netflix even do this? But that definitely is the reason why you're seeing big numbers in the base itself.
And these are big numbers. L4, 340K, L5, over 500,000, L6, almost 750,000 on a yearly basis in cold hard cash. That's a lot of money.
Yep. And I assume L4, to be honest, is more like 4 to 6 years of experience, right? And you get close to like a staff outside, which is like 340K, 350K. So that's pretty good. Great money right there.
Cool. Let's look at another one and we'll wrap. Sean, let's look at one of the companies that you've worked with in the past.
Yeah, let's look at Appfolio. This is one of my early career ones. They're a B2B property management software company. They're probably not that well known. They do have a small data science team though. And you can see, I mean, you can tell already compared to these FANG companies, it's smaller because there's less levels.fyi data here. But also because of that size and probably less investment in data science, we're talking about like how the company values data. They're going to pay less too. So here at Appfolio, no stock for this person on the median. When I worked there, they didn't really have much of a stock component, not compared to these FANG companies or the more well-known tech companies. And the base is significantly lower, 109K. Still, that's good money out of undergrad or grad school. This is L2, so this is probably IC3, IC4 we were looking at Facebook, where you're at 157 to 250, and you're only at 109 here.
So that was a very brief introduction to where you can get your data in terms of salary and in terms of what components of the comp structure you can reasonably expect in different companies.
Yeah, so this was the what are your expectations for a data scientist in tech with respect to comp? The big part of this is also how. How do I get this? Is it via raise, promotion, negotiating an offer? How do I set myself up for success during the offer and interview process? So if you'd like to learn more about how to reach this sort of competition in tech, if we get enough people commenting below asking for that type of content around how to increase your compensation, then we'll definitely make some additional videos on that topic. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment below, and thanks for listening.